that. Principle number 1, musical gesture should come from a strong point of view with a compelling impulse of will about the music. We must be able, in my opinion, we must be able to sing the piece or at least play it and play all, if not most of the parts of music. If we don't have that basic premise, a lot of our gestures are really just pattern navigation or choreography. So in my opinion, we have to feel strongly as the conductor that we have a strong point of view of what the music is trying to say, and that that's guiding everything that we're doing in our physicality. Number 2, all motion should have a musical or pedagogical function versus using a described pattern and trying to attach the music to the pattern. So we all were born and raised in our basic pedagogy of pattern navigation, right? 4-4 looks like this, 3-4 looks like this. But we have to ask ourselves, are we moving because those are the patterns we were trained to do? Or is that because the music demands that? So yes, the national anthem, the American national anthem, is in 3-4 time. But what are we going to do with that pattern to make it an expressive vehicle? Like, in other words, it's not just in 3-4. The music is the music, and we have to use the pattern to navigate our way through that instead of the other way around. And what I see a lot of conductors do is they memorize the pattern and then they try to attach the music on top of the pattern rather than the reverse. So again, number 2, the principle is all motion should have a musical or pedagogical function. Number 3, and again, these are Emily Trinan's principles. No, and others might agree, but number 3, I believe all motion should originate from the core of our bodies. So in other words, it's not just arms moving, but it's the whole body initiating that movement, or at least coming from something deeper and stronger within. A lot of conductors, I feel like they conduct from the chest up and everything is working here. And there isn't a sense of the music or the idea or the expression coming from deeper within the viscera of the person. And I believe that we try to connect to that. I'm not saying we move, I'm not suggesting that to move around a lot with our body physically, but that to have the music feel more organic as an expression, a place of expression as us as the recreator, it has to come from here and not so much from here. Or shall I say, it has to originate from here to get out to the hands. Number 4, expanded stick technique. I'm a really big fan of stick technique, meaning if I'm going to use the weapon, I want to make sure that I've got a lot of variety and a lot of control and a lot of ideas going on at the tip. A lot of conductors, I see the energy is right here. Information is in the hand. A lot of stuff is in the hand and not coming out at the tip. So I'm a firm believer that expanded stick technique facilitates greater connection between conductor and ensemble. Let me say that again. Expanded stick technique facilitates greater connection between the conductor and the ensemble. The other thing it does is makes you more efficient on the podium. So you don't have to stop and tell them, play it shorter, play it lighter. If you can get that right here, then you can hopefully train your musicians to do that in real time so you don't have to stop and say it. The last one, number 5, is, again, in my opinion, applying natural imagery and motion to our gestural language and or conducting toolbox increases expressivity and authenticity. So applying natural imagery and motion. And what I mean by natural are things we do in life, things that you just automatically do. You're all used to and familiar with cold weather. You know what it feels like to touch an icy fence. You know how your hand is going to adjust if it had to touch without a glove on, what that would feel like. You all know what it feels like to touch a hot stove, right? On accident, what your hand would do. You know what it feels like to hit something really strong, right? So in other words, really connecting and being like sensitive and tuning into things that we do with our bodies naturally and being aware of that and trying to play with that, putting that kind of motion into what we do on the podium is going to make you look more natural and more expressive. So those are my 5 principles. Before we do our conducting calisthenics, are there any questions or comments on those? And please just unmute yourself. I'm seeing no hands. All right, fantastic. Please grab your batons. Let's get comfortable. I'm going to adjust myself a little bit further back. So find a space in your world where you can stand. You can still see me. Again, please do speaker view. And essentially, I'm going to take you through some exercises that are in that handout. And what I'm trying to get all of us to think about when we move. And again, this is just one person's point of view. Thumbs up if you can see me okay? Great. All right. So first of all, in the principles that we're talking about, for me personally, a fundamental, let's say, concept that I firmly believe in as conductors is that, as I said before, all of our intention, all of our gesture, all of what we're trying to say, even if it's just a 4/4 pattern in its basic sense, ideally should come and initiate from the core. And here's what I mean by that. If I'm just putting my arms up and moving, and just watch for a sec, just moving in a 4/4 pattern without connecting it to my core, it's one dimension of conducting. But to me, this seems a little bit disconnected. It seems a little bit less authentic. And what I try to do to get my core engaged is I activate my breath. You can't activate your breath in real time when you're conducting to match exactly what you're doing. But I try to get the core to feel like all of the information, all of the score study, all of the ideas I have live here. And so if I put my arms up, I'm not just putting my arms up in a position because that's what conductors are supposed to do. I'm putting my arms up with the intention that we're about to make music. And this seems like a very basic thing, but I want you to try 2 things. And of course, I can sort of see you on your little screen, but I want you to try just sensing the difference of this, which is 1, keeping your body very fixed and locked and just putting your arms up like you normally would. So just use your arm shoulder hinge and put them up. Okay. And you'll probably notice, and this feels like basic conducting, you'll probably notice that when you put your arms up, your body is going to have to, counterbalance, right? Not like it's like an inch or something. We tend to lock our feet in our knees and counterbalance to try to make sure we don't tip over. If you didn't counterbalance, you would tip over forward, right? You have to do something in your body to counterbalance that. Now what I want you to do is to feel like your hips and everything below is available. And these are terms that I learned from the University of Michigan from Gerald Schweibert, but that the waist down is available. It's not that it's loose, but it's not locked. And everything is soft and available to move. And then when I lift up my arms, I'm not just lifting up my arms to start, but I'm imagining taking a breath in and I'm moving my arms in a way that music is about to start, whatever that music is. So my arms move up with the sensation of it's coming from the core, not from the shoulder. It's a very minor thing, but I think it's really, really important in the quality of our motion. So that's one principle, is just really basically, instead of just locking everything from the shoulders down and putting up your arms, you're actually imagining that your arms are part of an expressive beginning, even if it's a fast march, okay? So that's just one basic principle. Now, next thing I want you to do, so swing your arms a little bit. And just let release them with or without a baton. And then bring your arms up to center when you feel ready. And now some other principles I want you to think about is if you were to imagine conducting a group and you were to move, I want you to feel like you're moving from the core to those players. And again, I know it's kind of weird in a Zoom dynamic without any musicians, but I want you to imagine that, like, instead of your face going to the players and the hands, the body is going to the players, right? The body is generating where it is you're going. I had the privilege of working with a gentleman by the name of Bud Byer. Some of you may know him. Bud was a mime and theater specialist, and he really was trying to kind of unleash conductors from this rigid, sort of conductor embouchure, or this conductor stance. And he would just get us to direct our energy. He would call it the heart center. If you've got a player over to your left, that you're trying to connect with, don't just cue them like this, but lead with the heart. And I would add to lead with the whole torso. If it's an important moment to you, you've got to lead with this. You got to lead with that. Okay, so that's one of just physical principle number one, is just trying to get the torso to connect. And that, like, even if you're practicing 4-4, that this is still available. There's air in the body. There's still sort of life to that 4-4. And it's not just a mechanical exercise. All right. So you're going to see when you look at the handout, don't look at it now, but when you look at it later, you're going to see standing, these are some practice exercises. And that's why we're calling it conducting calisthenics. And you're going to see, like, number one, stand with a grounded and balanced posture. We all know that. Number two, ensure motions from feet to hands emerge out of constant availability. And what I mean by that is this idea, again, like, whatever you're practicing, that it's coming from the core. It's coming from this idea that you're never fixed, you're never locked, there's always motion. And again, I'm not talking about habitual back and forth rocking. That's different. I'm talking like, if you want to give a low brass cue down here, that your whole body is available to go to that moment. If you want to give something strong to the percussion, your whole body is available, and it's not just from the arms. All right. So that's what bullet point number 2 means. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, so shake it out, is we're going to just do, these are Elizabeth Green exercises that many of you probably know and love. And what I want you to do is we're going to go out for 8 and in for 8 with the metronome. I'll get it started. But when you do this exercise, to connect and to be available, I want you to try to inhale and expand your air capacity, and then exhale and contract the air. So in other words, I don't want you, we're going to do Elizabeth Green, like horizontal exercises. I don't want you just to, like, be locked in the torso and go out and in, but I want you to literally try to inhale and connect the torso to the quality of that motion, so it feels and looks a little more organic and not like Muppet arms. All right. So here we go. So we're going to go out for 8 and in for 8 with my fabulous metronome here. 60 seconds or 60 beats per minute. All right, here we go. Out for 8, in for 8, horizontal, both hands. 1, 2, ready, inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and inhale. 2, 3, expand. 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Shake it out. Okay. And I didn't preface this. Sorry, I jumped right in because we got going late and I just wanted to get to it. The reason why I have this conductor practice routine is because I think a lot of us, or I've just had a lot of students and a lot of colleagues and people say, listen, I know I'm supposed to score study. I know I'm supposed to be, creative. I know I'm supposed to have greater left-hand variety. I know blah, 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 blah. How do I actually practice this stuff? And I realized there's not a lot of, like, Rubank methods or Arbin methods or whatever methods for conductors, right? Like not attached to music, not attached to score study, flow charts, all that, but just literally like, how do you practice? So I want you to think of this as like smorgasbord or, a buffet of choices of ways to practice. So what we're going to spend our time doing is just you're seeing my kind of practice routine, and I kind of pick and choose little things that I do through this and practice unattached to any piece of music. This is literally just me doing my scales and etudes. Okay, so these are the Elizabeth Green exercises, right? Out and in. And there's a great video of Elizabeth Green on YouTube that's been up for a few years. You can just type in Elizabeth Green, Malco conducting, and you'll see it. It's like an old school video with like a blue, curtain or something in the background. But what you're going to see in her gestures, all of the exercises, which are pretty amazing, and you could do, it's pretty much just arms led or tip led. And I would add that the next dimension is to get the body connected, right? To get this idea of the core leading the gesture. So it just feels a bit more organic and a bit more natural. Okay, so that's what you're going to see, practice breath expansion, all right? And you're going to see in this first one, arms alone, arms together. You can practice just the right hand, just the left hand, both. It really doesn't matter. You get to pick and choose. Okay, so now we're going to do, I'm going to go a little faster with the metronome, and we're going to do a variety of other exercises. You're going to see on here horizontal, vertical, diags, semicircles, and alterations of the above. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do some fun exercises. This is 72 beats per minute. And now what I want you to do, we're going to go up for 4 and down for 4 and out for 4 and in for 4. All right? Vertical, horizontal. Make sure your arms are up as naturally as possible. Let your arms sway and just bring them up natural. Here we go. 1, 2, up for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and down. 2, 3, 4. Go out. 2, 3, 4, and in. 2. Repeat the pattern. Breathe. 3, 4, and down. 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, and in. 2, stop and relax. Now we're going to mess with you a little bit. And you're going to take your left hand and go up and the right hand and go out. So it's going to look like this. And then reverse. Woo! Right? Okay. It kind of doesn't matter which one you start with, right? We'll alternate. But the point is to alternate 4 and 4. Now, the more we get kind of physically just fun and like, ooh, let's do more independence, the more you start to not connect it to the torso, because your brain is thinking. So in other words, what winds up happening if you're not connecting it is it looks like what I call Muppet arms. Right? A very mechanical gesture. And that's not what I want you to do. So what I want you to try to do is literally like connect it, expand. If that means your torso opens up and you reach out, great. Same different, maybe naturally your body wants to move. That's fine. The point of this is not to do it right or wrong. It's just to get your body to do some different things that perhaps you haven't trained it to do yet, and just to practice. Okay. So we're going to get this metronome started. And then I'm going to ask you to go, if you want, right hand out with the baton, left hand up, and then alternate every 4 beats. Okay. Here we go. Shake your hands out, put them in your position, comfortable. 1, 2, ready, go. Out, 2, 3, 4, and in. 2, 3, alternate. Out, 2, 3, 4, and in. 2, 3, alternate. Out, 2, 3, 4, and in. 2, 3, last time. Let your body expand. 4 and in. 2, 3, 4. Relax. Right, so again, just quick demo. If I did not include my torso, again, hopefully you can see, it would look like this. Which to me, it's cool looking, I suppose, but it's not as connected, and it looks just like arm gesture. If I'm connecting my torso in an organic way, it's going to go like this. See the difference? And then come back in another organic way like that. So just on your own, kind of explore the two. Force yourself to just do arms and then expanse, like letting the torso, letting the heart center kind of lead the gesture on your own tempo. Just try that a little bit. Okay, cool. Yeah, good. So again, when I'm doing the gesture, I mean, a lot of times, so again, I should back up. I get ahead of myself sometimes, I apologize. But the first like list of exercise, I call arms alone, arms together, right? You can break this down, do one at a time. It's really up to you. A lot of times when we are, practicing these things and practicing stuff that might not, mirror, again, a lot of times our body just doesn't, we think too much about what our arms are doing instead of letting the core guide the way. Obviously you have to think about the technique because it's a little different, but constantly be asking yourself, is the core generating this motion or is my brain telling my hands to do this? So those are kind of the principles I'm trying to get you to think about. Okay, so the other exercises, and again, we're using both arms now just because we don't have a lot of time to get through these. You can certainly do all this stuff just one arm at a time to kind of build that and develop that. So the next one, so the first one was move arms horizontally and vertically. You can do all sorts of fun things. We just did 4, but you can do 8, you can do 6, 12, doesn't matter. And you can pick whatever tempos you want, right? Slow and fast. And you can practice all that stuff. Again, together or independent, doesn't matter. Okay, number 2 bullet point is diags and triangles. This is some of my favorite. So if I'm starting at the middle, just watch for a sec. Diags and triangles is just doing like the classic crescendo like this, starting in the center, go out, come back in, and then come back down. Now, again, when you do this, if I'm just doing arms, it looks like this, right? Fast motion. But if I'm adding my torso and trying to expand and inhale, I'm going to all of a sudden use more sagittal plane. I feel like my body wants to kind of lean forward more, and so I don't fall forward. I do have to counterbalance a little bit, right, to expand, and then come back in. And then I would also encourage you when you come down, instead of letting your body like sink down, see if you can't also expand this way. This is such a powerful gesture that we don't really do very much. We do a lot of stuff up here, but boy, if you come down here and do some things for low brass, this is an amazing space for nice, big, fat sounds, okay? But the challenge, I think, is as you come down, like expanding your torso up and not letting gravity sink you in like that, okay? So again, diags and triangles, connect to the torso so you're not just doing Muppet arm motions, okay? But we're gonna do diags and triangles. So we're gonna start in the middle. We're gonna go out for 4, in for 4, both hands, down for 4, expand, and then center for 4. We'll do it 2 times. Okay, same tempo, 72. Again, shake out your arms. Make sure your legs are not locked. And get your arms into your natural, quote unquote, starting position, neutral. All right, here we go. Out for 4. 1, 2, start now. Out, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, expand, and in, 2, 3, same thing, out, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2, 3, 4. Good, and relax. And another thing, I know for me, one of my challenges, and part of this is because I like to wear a little heel as well in my life, but that's my own problem. But one of the things that we have to avoid is when we go out, try not to lean too far forward because your arms, again, counterbalance, your arms are heavy and they want to do that. So if you want to look more powerful and strong or have the gesture be more powerful and strong, you kind of have to counterbalance by as you go out, you lean back just a little bit to have that feel more expansive and to look more expansive instead of leaning forward like that, right? And same thing when you come down. And you don't want to go too far back. That's awkward, right? But you want to counterbalance and try to expand yourself and get bigger and stronger this way instead of, like falling forward like that. So I can't see you on your sides, but be aware of that phenomenon. The more we kind of put our arms out, the more your likely weight is going to kind of tip forward. So you got to remember to counterbalance those gestures as you're expanding. Okay, so then the third little bullet point on arms alone and arms together is semicircles. We don't often think of semicircles, but this is just kind of a fun way to get out of our traditional, horizontal vertical business. So semicircles, you just take your, baton. You could go this way. You could go this way, but that one feels a little more awkward to do an inward semicircle. But I love to just practice this gesture just to kind of get my arm to do something different than the diags. So same deal, you can practice that with your metronome. Let's do something kind of wild and fun. Let's mix it up here. Let's have our right hand with the baton. Let's have that do the kind of the easy horizontal business. And then let's have our left hand come up to semicircle and then come back down. Okay. Yeah, I know it's weird, right? Ooh. Hopefully you're like, wow, that's kind of tricky. Okay, let's give it a shot. So we'll just do that, and let's alternate it, at the every 4 bar, or let's do 6 beats. Let's do something a little different. Okay, so 6 beats out and semicircle and 6 beats in, and then we'll change hands. All right, here we go, starting at 0, 1, 2, ready, go. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, change, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do it again, 2, 3, 4, try to expand, 6, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, relax. Okay, cool. Yeah. So those essentially are the arms alone, arms together exercises. And again, it's very straightforward. It's just a variety of different ways for you to practice. You can practice this for 2 minutes and try 2 things. You can practice this for 20 minutes. You don't really need your baton, but I like to have it in there just so I get just to get it, there and feeling it. For me, the arms alone exercises, arms together exercises are not at all about stick technique. It's just about independence. It's about connecting to my gesture. It's just loosening up my body so my body feels free and fluid to do these things. Now, not everything is a slow tempo, right? So then, of course, the next thing, if you want to start doing this stuff at fast tempos, we rarely practice at fast tempos, but you can do all this kind of stuff, like kind of mixing it up. If you want to do 4 beats, and just trying all sorts of different things in different directions. And again, there's no beating. There's no time beating. This is just getting your arms to move and to try different varieties of things. So maybe, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, maybe I'm just going to do left hand semicircles. And, or, all the things, all the directions. Okay, maybe I just do that. So again, that's just for arm motions, okay? All right, then the next examples, and we only have 12 minutes, so I'm going fast here. The next set of exercises are right hand with baton alone. And that, I think many of you, this is where I love to get into stick technique. And I'll just cut right to the chase and say that if you use the Laban 8 effort actions, and I am not a Laban scholar by any means, but there are 8 effort actions, the basic actions. You can Google it and you can see it. I like applying those to articulations, and I like to try to get that at the tip of my baton and to practice that. Okay, and I can put those 8 effort actions in the chat when we're done practicing. But officially, This is for me just getting, what I do is I practice just ones. I don't worry about 4/4, I don't worry about 3/4. I just practice some of these ideas with just trying to get information at the tip. And I don't think about hinges. I know we all practice hinges, shoulder, elbow, wrist, da, 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 da. I literally just think about, and I'm trying to put my baton in front of my shirt so you can see it. Can I really get a flick at the tip of my baton? And I put all my focus and energy there, and I just go flick, 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 flick. Flick is one of the Laban action principles. So take your baton, don't worry about patterns, just do downs, and just try to get a flick quality with the tip of your baton. Flick, flick, at whatever tempo you want. Doesn't matter. Okay? Now try to get slash. And it's literally like, there's no right or wrong. It's like, if I had to slash something with my baton, what would that feel like? Slash, slash, slash. Okay? Now what about punch? Okay? Now what about glide? And it's all one, no patterns, just get ones. What about ring? Ring is hard. Ring. Okay. So there are 8 of these. And what I do is I just try to practice the sensation. And again, there's no right or wrong. So like your glide might look more like this or whatever. But I just try, like with just ones, how much variety can I really get at the tip of my baton? And what I love about the Laban exercises is they align with, I think, my 4th bullet point, which is, or the last bullet point, which is things that are natural to us that we know about in life. We want to try to get those ideas into how we move. So in other words, there aren't like, conductor gestures that we have to figure out. It's like, what do you know in life that you just do? If you play baseball or you play golf, you know what it feels like to swing a bat or to swing a golf club. And it's getting that same idea in your baton, right? If you know what it feels like, I said before, to touch a hot stove, well, how am I going to get that feeling at the tip of my baton? Okay, so then it looks like a natural gesture on my body and not a choreographed gesture. I'm supposed to look short here because it's staccato. All right. Okay, so those are the basic principles of right hand. And I know there's a lot, but then what I try to do is put it together, left arm and right hand with baton together. And so here's the kind of stuff that I'll do. I'll say to myself, like, I'll write down all my 8 action principles. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do 2 flicks and 2 slashes with my right hand. And then I'm going to do a semicircle with my left hand. Okay, again, we're not attaching this to music. This is just your scales and etudes. So I'm going to set my metronome. It's putting it all together. I'm going to go slow just because I got to use my brain on this, right? So just watch. I'm going to do flick, flick, slash, slash, semicircles. Here we go. Flick, flick, slash, slash. Flick, flick, slash, slash. It's hard. Flick, flick, slash, slash. Flick, flick, slash, slash. Right? Now you guys try that. Flick, flick, slash, slash with the semicircle. Yeah, the semicircle is a hard one. We never do that one. Okay, cool. So when you're done, now let's try. And then the next thing you can do, of course, is a 4/4 pattern, right? Then you can start adding the pattern. Flick, flick, slash, slash while you're trying to do the left hand. But I don't like adding the pattern until I feel comfortable like navigating through these weird little exercises, right? Okay, so now let's do 8 counts. And your left hand is literally just going to go out for 8, in for 8, smooth and elegant. And then the right hand, let's not worry about, well, we can do a 4/4 pattern. Why not? Let's let the right hand do glide, glide. Let's see, glide, glide, ring, punch. Glide, glide, ring, punch. on beat 4. So we're going to do 2 rounds of that because it'll be 8 counts, okay? And then we're going to do the left hand going out for 8. So let me just demo first before you do it. Let me demo. Glide, glide, ring, punch, glide, glide, ring, punch, glide, glide, ring, punch, glide, glide, ring, punch. And you'll see my left hand got too fast. I didn't make it all the way. All right, so let's try that together. So it's 8 counts, out and in with the left hand, and then 2 measures with the right hand. Let's try it. Ready, go. Glide, glide, ring, punch, glide, glide, ring, punch. Back in. Glide, glide, ring, punch, glide, glide, ring, punch. Release. Okay, good. So that is essentially, in a really quick way, of like conductor calisthenics and ways that I like to practice. What you're going to see in this handout is it's very long and comprehensive. If you were to do this whole thing, and you're welcome to sit down, everyone. Thank you. If you were to do this whole thing, like, you know, exactly as it's written out, it would probably take 5 hours. I've never done that, so I can't tell you how long it takes. Nobody has that much time to practice, okay? But the way it's organized is like arms, it's kind of like basic piano class, right? Arms independent, try these things. Arms together, try these things. Hand independent, try these things. Hands together, you know, and then put it all together and practice kind of a combination of different things. So this is just one guide. And like I said, I'm hopeful there are some things in there that you can take away and just try, if nothing else for fun, to really mess with your brain. You can do like right hand doing like a 3-4 pattern, left hand doing 4s, you know, or 8s. And so you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where am I? You know, and then like slash, slash, dab, dab, you know, it does start to get a little silly for sure to just mix and match all of this. But I believe that if you do this not attached to a specific piece of music, what you're doing is just training your brain to have a lot of variety and independence. I know for myself, you know, in the 2 years we weren't conducting because of COVID, you know, we just weren't in front of groups, and I would just literally practice these exercises just to make sure like my brain can actually do this thing for 8 counts while this hand is doing this thing. So I think that it's just good to have a few of these little exercises, and I'm hoping that this is both fun and will challenge your brain in ways that maybe you haven't yet thought of. Okay, so first of all, show of hands, did everyone get the handout in the chat? Okay, great. And I will put, I have the little 8 Laban actions. I just think a lot of people already know these things, so I don't want to underestimate your intelligence, but let me throw those in the chat. And there, I mean, if you're interested in Laban, this is like a whole discipline. You know, people are Laban specialists. It's kind of like Feldenkrais or Alexander technique. You know, people really, there's a lot of research. There's a lot of connection to acting and to, you know, a lot of other things. And I am not a specialist with Laban at all. I just try to apply what I've learned to getting more information in my stick. So that's a lot. Thank you for joining me. Any questions before we take a break? Yes, Jessica, please.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you so much. I never learned so much in 45 minutes. So you mentioned a conducting video that was on YouTube kind of near the beginning, Anna something.
Yes. Elizabeth Green, I think is that the Elizabeth Green. Yeah. If anyone can find that quick, the Elizabeth Green conducting exercises. I think it's called Malco conducting. Malco. Let me see if I can find it on YouTube. I closed out my browser so I wouldn't have too many screens.
Great, thank you. That just sounded like such an amazing resource. I'd really love to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think someone.
This is my foundation.
Someone I think found the link.
Ultra wear.
Yeah, there it is.
Go. I need a fun front.
You know how the ads pop up. Isn't that great? All right. That is correct. The link that Hugh Corbett shared is the correct link. Thank you, Hugh.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure. Yeah, if you don't know Elizabeth Green, she's definitely, a person to know. She's got these books that have, they're old, but they're great little, like, kind of the same kind of thing, little exercises that are just kind of fun. You feel like you're choreographing all this stuff, but it's kind of fun to train your brain and to mess with your head a little bit to try these things. I think she's got one where she goes out for like 30 counts or something. It's like the slowest thing ever. And she does it like without batting an eye. It's amazing. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one actually. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
No, it's okay, please.
Thank you again. To relay what Jessica said, this was a very, very informative 45-minute session, and it was great and unique, honestly, in a way. And what I'm wondering though is something I've been discovering as a new conductor is that there is a huge difference between conducting and rehearsing.
Oh, yeah.
How do you have any tips on going about keeping these things in mind while actually getting into the dirty work of rehearsing a piece and teaching I guess teaching a piece to a band? It's just all these things are so easy to forget.
Yeah. So here, yes, I think they're absolutely separate skills, to be honest. They work together for sure. They're compatible, but I think they're separate skills. Why I like to do conducting exercises, like just kind of play with this stuff. Again, I don't do all of it all the time, but it starts to train my body to move in ways that it wouldn't like naturally do on its own, right? You're not, especially in independence. It's very rare that you're doing, these kinds of things in time and, even flow of time. Like you don't have to do all that stuff in life necessarily, right? But the more we start training our body, the more that becomes natural. So when we're in the heat of battle, i.e. rehearsing, that's like, when you're in it, the body has those skills already developed, and you're not trying to learn how to do it while you're trying to learn how to rehearse. So this is why I like to have just the physicality of conducting its own separate practice. So my body is very fluid and able to respond instantly. And I'm not up there thinking, 8-count drag with my left hand right now. I don't want to be thinking about that. It's like learning how to ride a bike. You have to learn how to do it so you're not thinking about it. So if a car hits you, you can adjust quickly. But if you haven't taken the time to figure out the physicality of balance, you're not going to be able to respond. So again, in my opinion, they're two separate skill sets. And the reason why we want to build these skill sets that are, again, separate from, it's different from like conducting at a piece of music, which, is a very different thing from just having basic fundamental technique of conducting so you can use it. A lot of times as a rehearser, like when I'm working with a group and I try something, I'm like, ooh, that didn't, I try to go wham, and like the sound I get is like terrible. And I'm like, okay, that was me. I'm not going to do that next time, but if I don't have a gestural vocabulary and a flexibility and independence, I can't try those things in real time. Then they become choreographed and like, oh, I always give the bass drum like this. That's my bass drum cue. And I try to avoid that personally. So there's more spontaneity and more real connection with what's in front of me.
So it's like training to build a muscle memory of these conducting techniques to make them become natural.
Yeah. This is nothing to do, when I say nothing, this is very little to do with rehearsal techniques. Other than, I do believe if you've got a greater gestural vocabulary, you can get more accomplished without using your voice.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Are we over time? I'm just trying to be mindful. I know.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily. Just incredible. And thank you. Just turned on the camera and away we went. That was fabulous. I think we take 5 minutes and a real 5 minutes so we can be on track so people can turn off their cameras and do whatever needs doing at their end. And we'll see you to start looking at some of the masterclass portion of the day. So it's, what time is it now? 2:03, 2:08, we're back.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you in a bit.
And welcome back to the second session. It's going to be the masterclass portion. And so, Emily, please take it away.
Sure. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'd like to address just a couple things in the chat here that we saw. Number one, from Emma Della Rosa, I completely agree. I think the goal for me for all of this really is just to have as much variety as possible, so I can have a lot of contrast. This is something we're going to talk about in the master classes. But so that I can have contrast for my musicians, so what they're seeing is not a lot of repetitive gesture or repetitive motion. Because if I want them to watch, they need to, have little things, big things, things that surprise them, maybe jolt them, like, whoa, what is she doing? But if it's all kind of from the same visual repetition, that tunes out an ensemble relatively quickly from them, basically not wanting to watch. So I completely agree. Someone else asked me, how often do I use the exercises? It's really, it's not that I'm that regimented where every morning I do it for half an hour. I don't do that. Full disclosure. It's not what I do. But when I feel like I'm, just my own gesture, if I'm over conducting a lot, or if I feel kind of out of shape or even tired, I'll just do it, I don't know, a couple times a week, maybe. I'll try some things. This may seem silly, but sometimes I walk a lot physically just to keep my body moving. And sometimes I'll just practice some things while I'm walking down the street. I'm sure people think I'm like, who's that? Why is that person waving her arms around? But just to, and I'll do it at a different tempo, right? So my feet are moving at whatever pace. And then I'll just try like quarter note equals 80, and try some of these things while I'm walking. So it's not, I can't say I have a disciplined routine about it. I'll just kind of check in when I'm feeling like my own gesture vocabulary is a little bit stale or stagnant. Okay, so Giancarlo is first, and I have to ask before we go, Giancarlo, what is your comfort level of us, me sharing the full video with everyone here? Is that okay?
100%.
Okay, great. So let me get it queued up, and then I will share screen. And what's nice, everyone, is your clips are relatively short. So I think we can go through, if not the whole clip, at least most of it. And then I've got some bullet points that I'd like to address with each person. Okay, so here is Giancarlo's clip. Show of hands, can everyone see him? Thumbs up, great, here we go. Hopefully you can hear it too.
Hi there, my name is Giancarlo Benetti, and I am a master's student at York University. Today, I will be conducting Frank Kelly's Simple Gifts Movement 1 in Yonder Valley. Thank you.
The audio isn't great.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry, I think maybe original sound on would be better.
Let me
Or
try.
sharing audio, computer audio, either one.
Please hold. Sorry, everyone. All right, is it like terrible, or is it just not great?
Terrible.
Okay, fair.
Sorry, if you're not using headphones, that might be the problem. Like maybe if you mute yourself and share the computer audio, that might help.
Let me just do advanced sharing options. Hold on. No, not there. Thank you, everyone. Just give me a sec, see if I can do this fast. Admittedly, I'm out of Zoom practice, which I'm kind of happy about. You know what I mean? I'm sorry about that. Here we go. Level. Okay, I'm adjusting this. Hopefully this will be a little bit better, everyone. Okay. Might not, but let's give it a try. Let's try it again, everyone. 1 second. Thank you. Okay. Let me know if this is better. Thumb.
Yes, better.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pause there just so we get moving. Here's what I really appreciate, Giancarlo, and you can sit down. You don't have to stand up. I want to see your face. Not that seeing your torso isn't lovely, but okay. So first of all, I appreciate your expression. I feel like your face, that it looks natural. It looks like you're trying to convey what you want to, what you want to say to your musicians. It matches the music. It doesn't look neutral. All of that is great. I know you're visualizing the ensemble where the piccolo sits and all that. So good for you. I also can tell that you've got some expressive ideas. Of course, conducting to recordings is just always so hard because you're responding to sound and trying to, move to what the audio is doing. So despite that, I think you're doing a lot of great things. For me, where the video is placed is kind of a challenge to see it. But going back to my original idea, I think for you trying to get the torso to be a little more connected, and I know without real players, that's hard too, but that the generation of like your gesture, that it comes from lower within your body and not just from your arms. And this is why it'd be interesting to see you like standing up in a rehearsal hall, right, and see your whole body. But from this vantage point, it looks a little bit, just army, which is fine. But the other thing is the way that you're moving, and again, this might be kind of where the camera is. My eyes are looking at this part of your hand a lot. My eyes are not drawn to this. In my opinion, if we're going to use the weapon, use the weapon. So what I see a lot of is a lot of your information looks like it's like this, bum, be-dum, be-da-dum, ba-da, and that the baton is kind of like an afterthought. So my challenge for you is, could you yum be dum be da bum body beam body dum body yada be ba bum be that, like, all of the information that lives for you here is coming out here. And again, this is so hard to like do on Zoom, but we're here, so let's do it. So that would be the biggest thing. And so right now what I'm seeing, and again, the camera's close, looks like this. Instead of, okay, so that's one big thing. How do you get there? How do you practice? Well, this is where some of that Laban action stuff can be helpful. And again, instead of telling yourself, relax the shoulder, relax the hand, don't put it here, just try to get information at your tip. So what I often do, this is how I'll practice. I sing, ya dee da dee da da. I sing and I watch my tip. This is how I practice, literally. Ya dee dum dee da 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 dee da dee dum ba da ya da dee da dee bum bum. I don't practice like this. Yum be dum dee da dum da dee dum da dee. You know what I'm saying? I watch my tip, like physically watch it, and I sing, and I ask myself, am I moving in a way here that I would want to do as I'm singing? And then when the I watch my tip. Right? So that's how I practice. and then I'm watching. And then of course, when I'm working with students, I'm not staring at my baton, but that's a way for me to just check in on this and how it's working. Of course, I usually do it standing. But that would be the biggest physical thing that I'm seeing is that it looks very handy and not very tippy. And so players are there, and here's why that matters. Players are going to have to decide, do I follow his hand or do I follow his baton? And you know, if there's the further away they are, if there's imprecision issues in how they're playing, which you'll never hear in a recording, but in real life, if there are imprecision issues, you have to ask yourself, uh-oh, is half the group watching my hand and the other half watching this? Because when they're watching the hand, the baton is behind the hand. So that's something you got to think about. Then the last thing, and Bill, keep me on time here if I get over time. The last thing I would say is, I think you're beating through. So to me, it looks like you're expressive, but you're applying the music to the pattern. And like the 2/4 pattern is like constant. And then you're trying to do it musically instead of just using that pattern as a guide. So here's what I mean by that. So at the beginning, you'll advance.
Hi there, my name's Kelly's Simple Gift.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now there you hold 2, but why do you show beat 2 on that long note when no one's moving? Yeah, exactly. So if there's no rhythmic motion, if no one is moving, you don't need to give the pattern, right? So 1, a 2, 1, a 2, and that's the other thing. Is 1 more important or is 2 more important to you? Right now, they both look equally important. Because this is just kind of on autopilot. It's expressive, but there's not much information. So do you want 1, but 2, 1, but 2, 1, but 2, but a hold, yada ba ba beam, bee buddy bum bum, 1, a 2, right? But what looks like this is just keep going, that, you know, this is just on autopilot, and then you're trying to be expressive on top of this, instead of specific to what it is you want. Does that make sense, Giancarlo?
Yes, makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not only just moving with the rhythm, right? So in other words, one just basic way to like elide beats and to look more expressive is to not beat patterns when there's a long note, right? If no one's moving, don't beat it, right?
Yeah,
Another
it's the difference between doing like a prep versus an actual beat too. If it's because it's held, you still need the prep, but not to beat through it. Yeah.
Right. So then I would just go, I would just go 1, yada beep ba bum. So hold, yada beep ba bum, beep buddy ba bum. Right. And I think for you, Giancarlo, the thing to work on is just taking away some of the beats, right? 1, a 2, 1, a 2, 1, dee dee bum body, yada ba ba bee buddy ba bum. Instead of this. So this goes back to contrast. If the general like image, you know, so if you're sitting, you know, 3 rows away, and this is kind of what you're seeing the whole time, there's less interest, even if it goes lower or higher, it kind of has the same just general, you know, I don't know, consistency. Instead of yum buddy bum ba bum body yada be ba bum be body bum, right? So it's a matter of having like a variety, so it doesn't look like the same pattern over and over. Where are we at with time, Bill? Are we good? Okay, perfect. So those are, I would say those are the biggest things that I noticed. You do things really well. And I think, you know, you're moving fine. But I would say that if we can get more information at the tip, that would be awesome. What question do you have, if anything, for me, Giancarlo? So you have some time to speak.
Thank you. Again, appreciated. Everything you've done is really appreciated. I can't exactly think of like,
You don't have to have questions. I just want to give you a chance to talk so I don't plow through.
Do you mind if I make just a slight request to just see how I do the end of this?
Yeah.
The breath at the end?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about too. Good.
Thank you.
Let's do it. Yeah, well, first of all, conducting to recording. This is where it's like, it's so hard. I mean, bless your soul for doing it. For all of you, you all did it. Yeah, the only what I would say, Giancarlo, this is true for everyone, for every piece, like universal truth, which there are very few universal truths, but I do believe this one is one of them. If you can sing how you want it to go and move in that way, it's going to be fine. But you got to be, if you can say, like breathe, yada beep ba beep beep ba bum bum bum, like whatever it is, like you have to sing it and you have to stare at your tip and do the thing that you want. If you can't sing it and you can't move to it, it's not going to work. So I'm a firm believer that singing it out of tune, singing it ugly, doesn't matter. But if you can sing the thing you want to do, and that's true for rallentandos, fermatas, slowing down, getting in and out of twos and fours and whatever, you have to sing it. And then you have to look at your tip and see if you can do the technical thing. That's why conducting to recordings is kind of tough, because like, it's not, you're responding to what the conductor is doing on that recording. Bill, good. Okay, perfect. I think that's all the time we've got. All right, Giancarlo, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Murray, and is it Murray or Murray? Just Murray?
Is Murray, yeah.
Excellent. Murray, are you comfortable with me sharing your video?
Yeah, no problem at all.
All right, great. I might advance past your introduction, which is lovely, and I love your shirt. Everyone's going to love your shirt. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's Murray. Hopefully the sound is better as well. Thumbs up, can you see Murray? Great. This is the loudest it can be. Okay, we'll stop right there. All right, good. Murray, thank you for that. And you're is there any way, Marie, that it's possible to get a little more light on your face or no? Maybe not. Maybe not. It's okay. Now I'm putting you on the spot and you're like, dang it, I
Yeah, I
can't.
don't. It's
It's
not.
cool.
It's not a great setup, but it's.
That's fine. So, have you ever had a chance to conduct this piece with real musicians or no?
No, I have never. I have not.
Okay, so here's what I appreciate in not knowing anything about you other than your lovely introduction. You seem to have a great positive spirit. You have musical ideas. You're connected to the aesthetic of the music. You look excited. I mean, I think all that is really appropriate. One of the things that I have to remind myself, this is something, in fact, as a teacher, all the things I talk about are things that I'm like, man, I got to do that better myself. So admittedly, when music is more rhythmic and fast, and like this, I mean, this is fast. I mean, it's not super fast, but it's on the faster side. We think that if we're kind of moving with a lot of energy and moving quickly, it's going to like help the players play better, I think. And also when music is fast and rhythmic, our bodies tend to get more quote unquote jacked up, right? Like we're more like, yeah, it's exciting, right? It feels more exciting. But I think sometimes when we seem a little bit overly active, that actually that especially working with people in real life, that can actually have more negative consequences where it's like it's almost too much moving around that can take away from just focusing on really good time and really good rhythm. And I just say that because your energy is awesome and your enthusiasm looks great, and I would never want you to stop that. But you kind of have habitual like moving around kind of a lot, even just in this practice. And I think you're trying to like show a lot of things physically, but I think in real time that you may not get the exact same results that you want. So what I would encourage you, in fact, sometimes when things are really rhythmic and complicated, that's when I get really basic. I try to. Sometimes it's not so much. If the group can play great and they're rocking and rolling, then maybe I'll get kind of fun and excited. But generally speaking, the more technically challenging or rhythmic the players have, the more kind of basic I try to get, and the more like cool headed, right? Like I try to get more stable. I just try to get more pingy, more clear, and let them do the work instead of me trying to like reinforce like what's exciting about the music. So that's just one general thing I would say. To me, you have a habit of kind of going back and forth a lot, which just means you got a lot of exciting energy in your body, again, which is great, but see if you can channel it to be a little more specific. So when you go into the macro beat, I think that's great, right? Where you're not conducting the 4/4, but you're doing like larger pulsing. What's really tough with a recording is your timing in just watching you is not quite as even as what the recording is. So what I would encourage you to do, if you're really going to, if like, let's say you were to do this piece or something like this, where it gets started in a fast 4/4, and then you start melding the beats, I would just be really sure for yourself that you have a solid 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2. Because when you go into the macro beats, you get behind a little bit. Murray, are you still there?
Yeah, no, I'm still there. I'm just listening and absorbing.
Yeah. So just know, and this is where sometimes, again, conducting to recordings can have, they're just false realities, right? Because you're just responding to sound. But just know that if you're going to do that, which I think is totally appropriate, you just have to really practice making sure that you're comfortable moving in that macro beat. So and let me ask you this, how have you practiced conducting this?
How have I practiced conducting this?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of getting into that macro beat, I tried to make sure that before recording or before practicing getting in that macro beat, that I was just doing the basic 4/4 pattern throughout to try and get a solid pulse on the tempo, to make sure that I had that 4/4 in my brain the entire time, and before translating it into the macro beat, and before adding in the rest of the 10 bajillion hand movements that I'm trying to incorporate there.
Yeah. But just in general, how do you, okay, so what we spent 45 minutes on is just talking, let's call it like scales and etudes of conducting, right? How do you, so when we practiced a real piece of music, we have our score study, which is like our homework. Then we have our practice on that piece. So how did you practice this piece? Are we frozen? Oh, there you are. Say that again, please, Murray. It got frozen for a sec.
No, I'm just.
How, or any piece, how do you practice conducting for a piece?
If I'm preparing a piece, I would go through like it. You talk about score study. That's what I do, and I go through and like conduct along in my head, and then I don't know if I'm entirely. I don't know, like what. Like I know what you mean, but I don't know if I know how to. I don't.
Well, so let me be, just because these minutes go by so fast, let me just say to everyone, we all have to find our way of like how we process music, how we digest it, how we get ready to get on the box for our players, right? Perhaps I'm a little old school in this, and I'm old school in some ways. The score study is its own skill and its own like digestion. Once I've studied the score, then I take my metronome and I look at my score and I sing and I practice with it. Beedo, 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 bum, beep, ba, bum, beep, bum, beep, with the metronome, right? So I've got my metronome, I've got my music, and I just stand and sing through the whole piece. I personally never conduct to recordings. I only sing and conduct. So that's why I ask, how do we practice? So score study is one thing. And then once the score is in, it's in you, you're moving, you got it, you've got what it is. Then can you actually stand there by yourself with a metronome and conduct and sing the whole piece? And I think that that's our goal, so that we know it so well. And I'll tell you why that matters. So it's not so much like, trying to match to what's happening, but we have such a strong point of view. This is my first principle, right? We have to have such a strong point of view that when I'm up in front of a group and I've got it in here strong, beedo, 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 bum, beam, bum, and all of a sudden, like the group is behind me. I'm like, this is my tempo, because it's so strong in me that it can't go any other way. Now, it's not to say in the rehearsal process I can't be flexible and change, but I have to know it so well, not only here, but here physically, that I can absolutely sing the whole thing double bar to double bar and conduct through it without a recording.
Yeah.
So that step, maybe if you do that, great, but that would be the thing I would encourage you. If you haven't tried that, I would encourage you to do that.
No, I've tried that. I do find that sometimes I get lost in recordings, but I do try and do it without the recordings.
When you say you get lost in recordings, what do you mean by that?
I mean, sometimes I get so lost in like trying to find the quote unquote right recording that sometimes I forget like that I need my own musical interpretation, because it's kind of like, oh, these other people have done this and this and this, but it's like, no, Murray, focus on, well, like, what do you want to bring to this?
100%. Recordings are not there for you to learn what's right or wrong. They're there, I think, to just hear other people's ideas about it. So I'll give you just a quick little story, and Bill, keep me honest with time there. Give me like a 1 minute. Okay, real quick story. So Lincolnshire Posy, do you know that, Murray? Do you know that piece? Kind of, yeah, okay, Warhorse. I happened to be doing this, like, I don't know, 15 years ago with the West Point Academy Band, which is one of our military bands on the East Coast. And Frank Wicks, may he rest in peace, was the master clinician. And I get up there, fifth movement, there's a moment, I won't bore you with the details, but I get there and I start conducting this thing that nobody else, I have not heard any recordings do, but the score says this gesture, okay? It's basically twice as long as the Fred Fennell recordings and everyone. Frank stops me in front of the band. Emily, what are you doing? Like, why are you holding that note so long? And I said, well, Mr. Wicks, Granger says, slow down lots, the dots go all the way through this moment. If we're going to slow down here, we got to blah, 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 blah. I explain it. He stops and everyone in the band is like, because no one talks back to Frank Wicks, right? And he says, well, I'll be damned. I've never seen that. Nobody's ever done that. And you're right. And I wouldn't have figured that out if I didn't study the score and feel like this. I know this to be true because this is what it says. So sorry for that long-winded story, but you have to come, I believe you have to come to a place where you don't listen to other recordings, don't conduct recordings, study, sing with a metronome. So you're producing the way that you want it to go. And then if you want to hear what other people are doing, be like, ooh, cool, I love that tempo. Maybe what would happen if I did that? Then you're listening with curiosity and not with right and wrong mentality. So I know we're out of time, but that's what I would encourage you to do. So Murray, I think you've got a lot of good ideas, and there's no technical problems I see in what you're doing, but I think just physically try to simplify when the music gets really I would say active, and then for you to feel really true to yourself, you got to just practice and come up with your own points of view more strongly, I would say. All right.
Thank you very much.
Of course, this goes so fast. Okay, thank you. Next up is Mike, correct? Mike?
Hello.
Awesome. And thank you for putting, by the way, thanks for putting minutes in the chat. I will say, Bill, I can't see the chat when I'm looking at videos, admittedly. I'm sorry. So just give me your
I'll do hand signals. Got it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Mike, are you comfortable with your video being up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Just a second, everyone. Hopefully the sound is going okay. All right, great. Thanks for your patience, everyone. All right, and here is Mike.
Program. And today I will be conducting for you movement 1 of Frank to Kelly's Simple Gifts. There you go.
Okay, we're going to stop there for a sec. Nice work, Mike. So what I appreciate in seeing this, I feel like you've got really clear patterns and really easy to follow. There's no extra motion that seems to be kind of getting in your way. You don't look like you have any tension. In fact, none of you look like you have any like unusual tension, which usually a lot of folks do, me included sometimes. So good work on that. I would say one of the challenging things about conducting to recordings is that it's hard to show preparation of something that you want to have. So I can tell you want bum, be dum, dee da dum, like kind of a ping on the downbeat. Is that right, Mike, on those moments?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then I guess having done this a few times, like trying to do more than one take, like the recording eventually like won. So I sometimes didn't do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, and I haven't seen anyone try this, but, what would be so hard to do, and maybe the next step is like, could you sing through it all, and like conduct you singing. I know, right? Everyone's uncomfortable with that, but that would be what I would recommend. But here's why I bring that up. So what I'm seeing on this video is whenever there's a moment being like a ping, let's call it a ping on the downbeat. What I see is you're traveling through time kind of elegantly, and then on the downbeat, it's like ping. It's kind of like I got you ping instead of preparing the ping. So in other words, this is one of the things that's challenging with a recording is if in real time, if I wanted bum be dum dee da bum body dum body ba da be ba bum, like if I wanted that, I would have to prep a full beat before to get that little ping. But I'm not seeing you prepare that. And again, it's probably because it's a recording, but that would be something to practice. If I want be done, I have to go, I have to prep it in that style. But every time you have that, what happens is it's like legato, bing, like it kind of happens on the beat instead of preparing before. So that's one thing. The other thing, like I said a little bit to Giancarlo, right now, I would say there's not as much contrast as I think that there could be. So let me ask you in the opening, yum, beat-um, bum, beat-um, what beat is more important, 1 or 2 for you? And it's not a leading question, I'm just curious.
1.
Okay, so it'd be great if you could show that. I'm going to rewind a little bit. Let me see. When I watch that, they look kind of the same. To me, they look the same of importance.
Yeah.
Right? So it's elegant. 1, 2, 1, 2. But if 1 is more important, bum, dee dum, dee da bum, da dee bum, da, like I would do a little something to emphasize 1 and de-emphasize 2. If 2 is more important, bum, be dum, bum, be dum, bum, be dum, right? But right now it's all kind of the same. Right? And then the other thing is when you want more like more of the lyrical material, it doesn't quite have the as much fluidity as I think it could, right? It doesn't have the same contrast. In other words, what you're showing kind of looks the same even when the music changes. So keep watching. There's a little more ping there for sure. More ping there. But this is different music here, right? Arguably, that's got a little more fluidity, but the stick looks kind of the same as it did in the opening. So this could be a moment. Right? So just basically like practicing, I would practice some figure 8 gestures, so it feels, and I know it's hard to do while I'm sitting, but it feels a little more fluid, a little more like this versus, the pingier gestures. Okay. Also, thank you, Bill. Also, when there's no motion, and I think I said this with Giancarlo too, like on the fermata or the dotted half note or whatever it may be, the cadence. I don't know that you need to beat through those, through the pattern. You could just hold that note, then prep the next gesture, right? Okay, great. Let's keep going. Yeah, and I would argue in that little moment, beats too are kind of cool there because you got the flute, saxophone, so that's a moment where you can kind of stop on 1 and then buddy, stop, buddy. And it gives you something to do too, right? So a little variety for you and for them. Yeah. For all conductors, if I'm feeling like I'm at a loss for variety, right? And what I'm showing is a little bit redundant. What can I do, right? It's in two. It's not that, complicated. I will often just change my plane. If I feel like, okay, I've been doing this 2/4 pattern for like 3 phrases and there's not much, I don't know what to do, I'll literally just lower my plane. And sometimes when the music is more lyrical, when there are more players, bigger instruments, literally tubas or bari sax or whatever, I sometimes will just lower my plane and I'll take the exact same thing that I'm doing up here, but I just lower the plane and I do a little more legato, a little more, let's say figure 8 gesture, and then all of a sudden it looks more musical. So that's just one little cheater thing. So I think for you, Mike, you could just literally physically adjust your plane, and that will help make it look a little more appropriate to what the music is trying to do. Okay, let's keep going. This could all be lower.
Yeah.
Right there, you don't need to beat all those beats. Just hold the note. Now here low, I would really go low. Okay, so again, I know it's a recording. In real life, in that moment, who needs you more, the trumpet solo or the low brass?
Yeah, definitely the low part.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is true for all pieces of music, everyone. When there's something that's got the same tune and the tune comes back, right? And so flutes get it first, then saxophones, then clarinet, I mean, whatever. But generally speaking, we think we need to keep conducting the melody. Definitely not. Go after what's new and what's the harmony, the bass motion, the harmonic motion. So if I'm conducting low brass and trying to shape that, that's going to look pretty different than just, the melodic stuff. So I think as you're starting to get more of that music, thank you, Bill, I would try to aim your direction to the lower voices.
Mhm.
Nice. Me too. Good job. Yeah, it's so hard to conduct a recording. So we'll just stop share. It's so hard to conduct a recording. Boy, you figured it out. You did great, especially on the end there. You really got it great. But you can see even on that, like after you release the sound, like you had to kind of catch them on that downbeat, right? Because prep, in real time, you would obviously give a prep and give the downbeat, and it would be great. But yeah, you had to try to catch them. So that's why I said at the beginning, like, it's almost impossible to prep when you're conducting at recordings. So just know that. And I would just practice exactly how you want it, be able to sing, bum, be dum, bum, be dum. And to another point, like at the end, like when in doubt, you just sing exactly what you want, breathe exactly how you want it, and then it will be fine. So in the last minute, do you have any questions for me, Mike?
Well, one of the things I was wondering, it's maybe less of a question, like maybe I want to know what your thoughts are, is that I have this thing that like when I do score study, I look through like all the parts and I figure out what's important to do when. But sometimes when I get to like an ensemble and I start like working on it, I hear things that I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought that would sound like, but I'll go with what the group is doing. So I was wondering how important it is to like stick with your idea and that, or like to go with whatever you're working with.
That is a great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I think it's all kind of dependent on on it's dependent on so many different things. If what the group is doing is like, wow, that's really cool, and I didn't think about that, and I like it, then I don't change it. I take note, like, great, I love that. I let it go. And then I go back to the drawing board and just make a note of it for next time. If it's something that it's like, well, is it because it's a habit that they're used to, and I'm not sure if I like it, but that's what they want to do. We talk about it. And then I might say, like, hey, let's try this 2 or 3 different ways. Here's what I'm hearing you do, blah, 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 blah. Can we try it this way? A little faster, a little slower.
Right.
Or I'll even say, like, I know your instinct. I can feel your instinct here is to want to do that. Thank you for sharing that. Can we just try a different thing and see what you think about that? And then, explain it and then try to show it to them. And then sometimes I'd be like, okay, great. Show of hands. Who liked the first version? Who liked the second version? And then then they're kind of involved in like what that is. So I do that a lot, like at the retard there at the end. Sometimes I'll try it, this way, and I'll be like, okay, a lot of people subdivide, a lot of people go in 4, a lot of people do this. We're going to do it 3 different ways. You're going to vote. Which one do you like? Here's staying in 2, boom. Here's going into 4, boom. Here's doing subdivided, boom. Show of hands, right? And then the group gets to decide. Then I take a note, subdivide, group wants it this way. So that's one basic example. And I think players appreciate that of all levels, young and old.
Right. Thank you so much.
Sure. And really nice work. I mean, like I said, you don't have any like unusual habits or things that are getting in your way. I would just say, Mike, for you, contrast, adjust your playing, don't forget about the harmonic motion. Try to not attach the music to the pattern, but let the pattern guide you through the music. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice job. Thank you. Okay. Next up is, I believe, Sydney. Is that correct, Bill? Thank you. Sydney, are you comfortable with us sharing your video?
Yes.
Or me, I should say me sharing your video. Okay, great. We'll get this queued up. And Sydney, we will have your introduction.
Hello, my name is Sydney Saradram, and I am a master's student at York, and this is To Kelly Simple Gifts, Movement 4, bars 45 to the end.
All right, nice work. Let you all the way through. This one had a lot of different transitions and stuff, right? And a lot of different tempo changes, and I would say one of the more kind of technically rich, perhaps, of the excerpt. So really nice work, and I wanted everyone to see you navigate through that. So again, it's tricky, and I don't want to be redundant. When we are connecting to recordings, it's just hard to prep things, right? Kind of hard to prep the change or prep a tempo change or a style change. So let me ask you, before I talk about some technical things, Sydney, for you, how did you prepare this and, sort of feel comfortable doing this, conducting through this piece?
So I had to, again, with the transitions, listening to recordings was not the most helpful. And so it was really deciding how I was going to give each, how I was going to give each fermata and the sound that I wanted it to the release, and then the sound into the start of the next note. And so honestly, it was deciding the releases that kind of guided the transitions when I was studying the piece. And then I kind of worked through deciding the score study, deciding what was important and singing through the melody to kind of decide how the phrases were going to go, and doing all those things. And then I found like putting the recording to it, because I did have the chance to do this in rehearsal once Professor Thomas allowed us to do that. And so putting it to the recording afterwards was the challenging part.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And one element I haven't had a chance to talk about with anyone yet, but and I think there are possibilities in this movement, but not so much in the other movements, which is why I didn't bring it up. Obviously, we want to think about conducting melody and shaping that. That's a big part of our job as conductors. But I would challenge all of us to think a bit more about shaping the harmonic motion. And shaping exactly like where are there interesting moments in the bass line, what's happening with the counterpoint. I, over the years, have tended to conduct much less of the melody and much more of the bass line and the harmonic motion. I'm a big fan of like score analysis and harmonic analysis, and not so much through the lens of like, oh, I have to know this is a B flat 7 or this is an F. But when I see that there are patterns, or if I see that, oh, this harmonic motion is going to a note that maybe we wouldn't expect, or the interval is a second here, I start to treat those moments a little bit differently, and that helps inform actually what I'm going to do with the melody. So the melody, I'm not just shaping the melody because it's pretty, but I'm using what Craig Kirchhoff, one of my mentors, would talk about, which is informed intuition, to understand that the melody might want to pull back a little bit here. And it's not because of the melody, but because of the harmonic motion underneath it. So I would encourage you, and I think this movement has a little more variety than some of the other movements. So I'd encourage you to look at that and explore how learning about the harmonic motion might influence your melodic phrasing. So that's just one kind of interpretive thing. Technically, I like that you're trying to do more like legato phrasing, but what it looks like a little bit to me is that the elbow is kind of guiding it a little like this. And then when you're trying to be more horizontal, that the elbow is kind of like trying to do it this way. Why that matters, right? Like who cares really in the end? But for me, what happens is as a player, I have to ask myself, am I watching her baton or am I watching her elbow? So if you're going like this, and then all of a sudden you're going like this, right? I'm seeing your baton here, which is great. And then all of a sudden I'm watching your elbow. And for players that are not like scrutinizing your conducting, thank you, Bill. It's just a subtle shift for them, because if I notice that, they're going to notice that too. And then the question is, well, what are we going to watch? Should we watch her baton or should we watch her elbow right now? So just know that that's a thing for you to consider when you're trying to do legato. So how do you practice getting out of that? Well, so I would encourage you, this exercise, a lot of conductors, and this is for all of you and me, we don't like to take our hand and go this way because it's unnatural. There's a reason, right? That's awkward. Okay. So, but If we want to have a little more horizontal fluidity and a little more space, this is also some Elizabeth Green work. We've got to take, in other words, we've got to take this hinge and start to stretch it a little bit and get more comfortable with our hand going like this. A lot of conductors do really beautiful, like going over to the left, but then they stop or use the elbow to go over to the right because they're not comfortable doing this motion. So for you, Sydney, I would encourage you to just without a baton, do some of these exercises. And I'm trying to do it against my black shirt so you can see it. Like go in a pool and just try to get this hand to go to the right. Don't hurt yourself, obviously, but just to loosen up that tendon. And so then you can feel like you can do a little more of this work and then start doing figure 8 exercises with the tip trying to lead. The hand will lead a little bit here, but then the tip has to drag. So you've got a little more fluidity here, and the eyes are then drawn to the baton, right? And not so much the elbow. Okay. So I would encourage you to try to practice this kind of activity just to get, and again, it's like super flat figure 8s, and it's all coming from the wrist. If there's a camera under here, it would look like this. It's kind of hard to do that, but you get the idea. So I would encourage you to do that. The other thing, and I don't know, you may agree or disagree with this. I think generally speaking, like right here where we've screenshotted you, a great shot, the tip of the baton, as we know, generally we want to keep it to the center, like aligned with our spine, right? Which you have beautifully. Sometimes though, when you want to do change, your tip shifts over like a foot, and all of a sudden the pattern goes over here, right? You notice that, like when it gets louder? I would encourage you to still keep it centered, keep it centered. I mean, you don't want to cross your hands too much, but keep it centered and allow yourself to take that hand and go this way more and this way more. So the ictus doesn't shift over to your right like this. One general rule of thumb related to that is, for me, if I'm doing something big and dramatic, I don't worry about what I'm about to say. But 9 times out of 10, you can all write this down. This is an Emily Trinan original. My eyes tip their eyes. Eyes tip eyes. So if I'm trying to convey some information to my trombones, one great way to do it, eyes tip eyes. Boom, 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 right? Tubas, boom. I mean, sometimes if it's like a general, like everyone's playing loud and full of Bach chorale, I don't worry so much about that. But if I'm trying to get some specific information, eyes tip eyes. But if my hand is over here, then people aren't looking at my face. The other reason why I love eyes tip eyes is if I'm trying to be expressive with my face, it just draws them into my face, right? And if I'm like, no, you, and now you, and like, oh, you, right? There's sort of like I'm connecting here with you, but you can't do that if you're moving over here. So eyes tip eyes is a big thing that I do a lot. Okay, but so Sydney, I think you're doing a lot of really great things. You look musical, you look expressive. Again, no weird technical problems, which is great. And I think just the challenges that I see technically with some of the, coming in and out of certain tempi is just because you're at a recording, and it would be lovely to see what you would do with real players. But yeah, because again, it's really hard to prep the next event if you're like kind of waiting for because there's that little hesitation. Any quick questions for me before we move on?
No questions, but I just want to say that Giancarlo and I conduct a group, and I've attended quite a few things we did in 2020 online. And one of the things I was talking with Professor McKay about earlier this week was a book that you recommended, Completing the Circle. Yes. And when I read it last year from one of my courses, completely changed a lot of things that I was doing in terms of like having an ensemble and the purpose of an ensemble and what it should be doing and that kind of thing. So thank you for that. And I feel like I've met you. I've heard you speak multiple times at this point. So it was nice to finally meet you.
Well, gosh, that's lovely. It's so great to know that, well, it's great when people actually, read things you recommend and it turns out to be a benefit to you. That's great. And it's all Bud Byer. Again, that book is Completing the Circle by Bud Byer. I think I mentioned him very briefly when you were talking about the torso and engagement. This book is just wonderful. We lost Bud Byer a few years ago, unfortunately, but he wrote this wonderful book. And it's not about conducting technique. It's really about like how we as conductors and performers in like the classical art world might want to think about like breaking down the fourth wall that we kind of put up in our procedures with our audience, and just, you know, asking us why we do what we do and how do we find ways in our medium to try to really connect with our audiences. So, I mean, it's more than that for sure, but it's a really interesting book, and I'm glad for you, Sydney, that it kind of challenged you or got you to think a little bit, perhaps more richly about your work. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right. Should we move on, Bill? Dr. Thomas, I should say. Sorry. I know your students are here. Let's be formal. All right. Last but not least is Kevin, correct? Kevin, are you also comfortable with your video?
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
I've had the pleasure of working with Kevin in the past. It's nice to see you again, Kevin.
Nice to see you too.
Okay.
I'm delighted to be conducting Kate Nishimura's Chasing Sunlight for you this afternoon.
Okay, we're going to pause there. So, Kevin, good to see you again. Have you ever conducted this piece in real life?
I have not, no.
Okay. Tell me why macro, why not beat, like conducting faster? Why macro beat?
I felt that it was just a little too busy. I wanted to get the sense of floating, the sense of sort of airiness in the eighth notes. So I wanted to get away from sort of being a little too busy with the four.
Yeah, I love that. I asked that question because we've heard this clip in a different, you know, another person has conducted it. And I think, here's what I would say. I think, you know, you can argue both ways for sure, right? And I've seen people do it both ways. So there's no right or wrong way. And I kind of believe that with everything, just so you know. Let me ask you this, Kevin, since I've worked with you, the downside of doing macro beat is what?
Losing time and being out of time.
Yeah. So and again, this is what's tricky with conducting with recordings. We can't really see this because you're not impacting the rhythm or the time. But if you're going to do the macro beat, you just have to be really confident that all of your preparation and everything that you're doing, that you're feeling. What I have learned in macro beat, this is for everyone, every piece, is that I have to go faster than I think I should. I have to be, or maybe I have to be further ahead than I realize I need to be. And that is a sensation you can't feel with a recording. You can only feel it with groups. So I say this because if you do this in real time and you feel the group getting slower, that's probably because you're right with them and you need to be further ahead of them. It's not a matter of like faster, it's like a matter of anticipation. So it's not like, oh, I have to go faster with my metronome. Nope, it's just like you have to kind of feel like you're rolling faster. And that is a sensation that there's no way to replicate that other than just being in front of it. So I just share that with you. And for everyone, should you do this piece, which is a very popular piece, getting a lot of great play, that will be a reality, or any piece where you go into macro beat, that the tendency is for you to just be on right with the beat. And that's actually a little late. You want to just be a teeny bit ahead of it. Okay. So the one of the benefits, or excuse me, drawbacks of being in a macro beat is that you lose time a little bit. What is a benefit of being in the macro beat? What can you do?
In this sense, I thought that you could do sort of bigger, more expansive gestures, but also to think of the bigger architecture and lead people towards points and away from points in a more fluid way.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for articulating that. I completely agree. I would say that I think you're doing that really well, but I think there are moments that you could like kind of dig in just a little bit more, or at least guide us to make sure that we know exactly where that arrival is. What I see in how you move is really fluid, really open, easy, clear. I think a lot of it is very compelling. But I think that you can get even like a little more muscle, a little more direction when we get to those moments of like mini arrivals, right? They're not big deals, but just leading us a little bit more. I wanted to pause for one reason only, and then I'm going to rewind a little bit, and I want you to focus on this. I think since you and I have worked together and you've heard me talk about the smiling torso, right? Or the open torso. Do you notice that you want to kind of concave a little bit?
Definitely. And I think it's been something I only recently caught because we've been so in front of computers that I've noticed that too within myself, my own posture.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. And of course, doing, you're in your whatever room and you're like, probably your computer's probably playing the music, right? Like it's like all the things, right? But for all of us, I mean, I had to catch myself doing that too, just because we were so, like sitting, all of us zoomed out, right? That I literally had to, like, when I started conducting again, I started doing exercises of just like opening up my, like stretching my arms like this, trying to stand tall, open this up. I jog a little bit, not recently, it's too cold, but like in the summertime, I just to try to get my body to like recalibrate a little bit. And we're all going to have to, I think, suffer from this Zoom world for the last couple of years here. But yeah, so, and when it happens the most, Kevin, do you notice, and we're going to rewind, when do you notice that it kind of concaves the most?
If I'm thinking back, I think it's more diminuendos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I feel myself kind of going inward.
Yeah. And it's either diminuendos or some kind of stylistic change, that you're trying to do with your hands. So, and again, I want to identify that so that you can just, not to be overly sensitive or overly like critically aware, but just so you know, like, okay, in these moments, your habit, like all of us, may be to just kind of, slightly compress. And for you to like, maybe in those moments, put a Post-it note, expand, just some kind of a reminder, if there's a diminuendo, literally put it like a green Post-it note, expand. And it's not like you're going to like, be obnoxious, but you want to try to counterbalance what is natural to you. Right. And so posting little reminders on your score might help you do that. So let's keep watching from. See, it's also soft. Do you notice that? You kind of like lean in a little bit. And again, I'm being picky because you're doing a lot of great things, but this is a little bit of a habit of yours that if you could stand a little taller and bring them to you more, even in your practice, I think you'll find it to be a more powerful gesture. That's pretty open. To me, you're just a little behind the music. You're not, and again, it would be different if you were in front of real players. A little behind. If you were to expand right here. Now, I would say, so I love how open you are and expansive, but after that big arrival, I think you could probably take your frame and just reduce it a little bit. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but at this point, like the last 15, 20 seconds, it looked a little bit like, well, this, it looked the same. And I think that in a moment where there's not much going on, right? We had our peak and now we're kind of doing this. I think you can get out of the way just a little teeny bit. But your quality of motion is so great. Like it's so easy and fluid, like I'm sure your players would feel very comfortable playing under you. So it's not I don't want you to change the quality, but just maybe the size a little bit because there's just not that much happening. Great, right? Stand tall. Great. Look, when you stand tall, it's wonderful. It can still be small. You just bring them in like this, right? Keep your torso up.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, again, so he and I have worked together, everyone. So that's why I can just like dig in on this. And you do so many things well, Kevin, I think, and that work well. And just this torso thing is just something to be, again, as you said, you're already aware of it. But when you are expansive, boy, that's like really, really powerful. So don't be shy in using that. And then I would just say, like, I mean, I think your idea of going macro pulse and being fluid, that's really, really great. Just be careful that it doesn't get into the habit of like being the same kind of size and shape for too long. So a side note for everyone, and again, I'm guilty of this, right? I try not to be, but I think there's a Malcolm Gladwell book out there that talks about the book Blink, which is like we have these, people kind of like, dissect us, whether they like to or not, within like, 10 seconds or 20 seconds of like just kind of sizing up a person, right? Sizing up whatever situation, right? If you're stuck in a Zoom lecture, you sized me up within 10 seconds, right? That kind of thing. Same is true for players and conductors, which is, they will like, if what they're seeing is repetitive motion for too long, they stop paying attention. Right. So it's almost like it's like 4 or 5 beats, I think, if it's the same, that they're going to be like, well, okay, we get it. And they're going to look down. So trying to show a little more shape and contrast of size and plane. So you could take the exact same pattern. You're just going to expand it, make it smaller, go higher, go lower, just something so it shows a little bit more contrast. That will just keep your players a little more engaged with what you're doing. So great. Any questions that you have, Kevin, in our last minute together?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Trinan, again. I actually do have a question, and it's something that I've noticed in my own conducting, that I noticed that my feet end up being, if this is sort of the base of my feet, I end up sort of going one in or the other, a little forward than the other to maintain balance. Is that something you have any insight on? That's a good thing. It's not a great thing.
If anyone has ever seen me live, I have to constantly be aware of my own feet. I'm a mover on the podium and I know it about myself. So I have to not do that so much. But I would say, I think in general, your body should just be available. I mean, I really do think like the best thing is the availability where you feel like you can be free to move in the way that you want to move. Where we have to be a little bit aware of, again, not too hypersensitive, but if we're moving habitually, because we always do, like bopping back and forth or bending our knees. I used to be a really big knee bender for a long time. Like I'd bop on every beat or something. If they're doing something that's like habitual and it's taking away from the expression of you and your players, that's when it becomes something to be aware of and try to remedy. If you're balanced where your one foot's in front of the other, a lot of conductors conduct like that. I don't think it's a problem. I think you can just, for me, when I'm trying to like be mindful of my feet, I'll put a post-it note like feet, calm feet or something, just to like remind myself, like to not get too, physical. So to me, that doesn't seem like a really big deal, but if you want to work on it, that's one way to do it. It's just to, every time you get on the podium, just like calm feet, balanced feet, whatever. But what I think you want to avoid is being so hyper nervous about it that you're like locked. You never want your feet to be like locked, or your hips, or any of that, right? So the idea of availability is like you're fluid, you want to be stable, but if you need to, lean into your tuba section, or do something, that you're doing that with intention, and you've got the availability to do that. So just be aware that if you get too hyper focused on something, it can actually cause another problem, right? Where you start locking, and we don't want that. Okay. Yeah, great. Mr. Thomas, any other comments or?
Emily, we do have some comments, and I want to start off with a big thank you to you. How do you say it? We persevered this year in a really shifting climate, and you wouldn't appreciate how shifting it has been behind the scenes. And I want to thank you for your flexibility. We were scheduled for the full day, and we've reduced it to just a 2-hour session, trying to read people's Zoom appetite lately. And I would say during the session, we probably underestimated their appetite, because you made this really appealing for us. We could have kept going and going and going. And with that in mind, next year, we're hoping that Emily is going to be our clinician when we finally return to a live version of this, which will be the 29th year. And when Matt told me that was just absolutely astounding to me. And what's more astounding is I've seen some of the same faces at every one of these for the last 28 years. So you all know who you are. That said, thank you to all the delegates who took the time out to be with us. The support is just essential to this. And you get a really strong sense of who our community is when you come to these events, I think. I recognize faces of people I don't even know, but I recognize them through these kinds of sessions. So thank you all for your support. The OBA has been incredible in their support. In fact, I think they pushed to make this happen this year, and especially within that, Matt, Peter, and Pratik, for all your assistance with this today and in the days leading up. I have to thank York University as well as the OBA, because York University is incredible in their support and their trust for, if that's a good thing to do, we'll do it. And they're in. So I thank them, our department chair, Louise Rosen, and our dean, Sarah Bei Cheng, for just, it goes without saying, they're just backing us and supporting. Finally, the people who submitted videos for this year was a little different. Generally, pre-registration happens with clarity, and we know what's going to happen. And we have any number of people who said they'd like to get up that day, and we try to accommodate as many as possible, based on taking people from a variety of backgrounds, picking people who were keen on applying. This year, we primarily tapped people on the shoulder because we didn't have time to go through that process. And I think they all really came through. So thank you very much. Emily, thank you again. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Further thank York University and Professor Bill Thomas for the wonderful partnership with the Ontario Band Association, leading towards the culminating of these symposiums. Thank you to the OBA board members for all of your support, and for Pratik and for Matt Roderick for doing the gatekeeping duty for the Zoom today. And a special thank you to our web maestro, Mira, for creating the OBA website, the promo poster, registration form. So we can give them a round of applause. Thank you. Special shout out to Dennis Beck, who I believe is in the Zoom with us, and who is one, as Bill mentioned, probably one of the people that have attended every single one of the Wind Conductor Symposiums in the past 28 years. He was the founder of this event, and he was hosted the event. He ran the event for the first 13 years of his existence. So thank you, Dennis, for starting this in Ontario and for keeping on supporting us. And then I want to thank all of the delegates here, all of you OBA members, for joining us in this symposium. Without your support, we're not able to run these events. And please remember to check out the other OBA events, including the Beginning Band Symposium, which is free to everyone here. And that's going to be taking place in October. So it's free this year to all members. So please make sure to check out the other events. And thank you, Emily, for being our guest clinician. We look forward to you coming to the Toronto area next year for an in-person full symposium at York University. And yes, so let's give a round of applause for everyone. Thank you.